Well, welcome back, everyone. We're going with video. Ross, if you want to take the lead, go ahead. So welcome back.
Of the
Ross, go ahead if you want to keep going with that. I'm going to keep interrupting back. So welcome to the Group Think Echo Chamber podcast.
Yes.
With your hosts, Dan Morshauser, Andrew Trebing, Ross Smith, and James Kanzolka. First of all,
chamber has been assembled.
First of all, we have to lead off by congratulating our league champion, Andrew Trebing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well done.
It was a year where I had the best rookie receiver of all time, and he was sitting on my bench for like the majority of the games. Because I thought I'd start.
Shame.
I mean, I had a lot of options at receiver, and more than I expected. And yeah, I mean, I hit a couple of timely, important games. Jalen Hurts, Aaron Jones, and I didn't have the most points for, but the playoffs came around and it kind of swung my way this year. So I'm happy because I made some moves for, hemorrhaging my future basically for some players now. And I guess it worked out. So yeah, it's good to be the best.
Yeah,
it's good to be the best.
Your team was fairly good all year. It wasn't like a surprise. You were definitely in the top, 2 to 3 all year long. So props to you. It helps when you get Lamar Jackson when no one else thinks he's going to be shit.
Yeah.
It was your team was well deserved. It's very it wasn't one person based. It wasn't I'm not going to be like it was a problem, but like people won games because of Alvin Kamara. People won games because of Dalvin Cook. People won games because of DK Metcalf. Your team was very well rounded. So props.
Yeah, and Joe Mixon was really the only big injury that I had all year, to be honest. I mean, a couple here and there, but
that was a lot of the year though. Is avoiding the injury bug. I know Dane kind of touched on it on the group and kind of cried a little, but and then he'll say he beat me, which he did. So, but it was everybody was dealing. Everyone was It's annoying to go in and someone go, I shouldn't win any playoff games. I'm terrible. And then he beats me. It's awesome. But it was one of those things where everyone was trying to dodge those injury bugs all year. And even adjacency, like Zeke was worth nothing because of the injuries around him. Like he was fine.
Yep.
But it could be somebody like your quarterback and your line or something, along those lines. So
that was
Zeke
is interesting. All the injuries. I mean, depth was so much this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty clear they were not ready, for football. It goes down to that. They've shut down the bulk of OTAs for the last couple of years, and now you're looking at a shortened preseason without OTAs. These guys are walking on the field for the first time for the first game.
Preseason this year.
Yeah, so you get injured. It's a hard sport to play, and it's a rough sport to play. So if you don't prepare for it, you're gonna blow out some shit real quick.
One of the big things too was like Christian McCaffrey and Saquon going down like quick, who are like the top 2 consensus like superstar studs.
Yeah. And somebody like Christian, it was something where Christian was going to recover, and then he just got another injury. So
yeah, he just basically wasn't there all year. So. Maybe next year.
Maybe. Unless he gets traded for Deshaun Watson.
Oh, man.
Dude, that sounded more imminent than anything now.
There's a huge degree of it in fantasy. I don't get why GMs and owners, some of them, like when guys win Super Bowls, you typically have players praising upper management. It's always the same way. Like rarely do you have a team that wins a Super Bowl be like, despite what was going on against us upstairs, we won. It's usually like our owner, our upper management was awesome. So it baffles me when guys like, what's the family name in Houston? I forget. That you treat your superstar with such distance and such like not disdain, but like a very like, you're there, we're here for a reason. It's like, what reason? Like, why? You suck. Like, you haven't been good. He's the whole reason you're good right now.
Yeah. What a downfall.
And I feel like it was a straw that broke the camel's back because this has happened with J.J. Watt before him, where they didn't use him, and then DeAndre last year. I mean, you're talking about a team that had the best receiver and one of the top 5 quarterbacks, and they're going to be terrible now. It's so weird.
They're going to have none of them next year.
Yeah,
and I think the expectations of them trying to get 3 firsts for him is a bit much. Like, I understand he's valuable, but no team should, in their right mind, go and pay 3 firsts for any.
Unless they're late first. Like, if the Steelers could pick him up,
I can see. Yeah.
Yeah, if the Steelers could trade 3 firsts for him, then I would snap that off.
I respectfully disagree. Considering what you're getting in return, I would say no one player is worth 3 first-round picks, most likely. And then when you go, oh, but what if it's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league potentially? He's under 25. He's a fantastic leader. He's a fantastic influence on your community. He's an awesome kid. Like, this is all stuff that, 99.9% of the time, nobody would be worth 3-round picks. You know who is? Deshaun Watson, under 25 years old. Like,
he's a quarterback.
Yeah, you'd leverage all other positions to get a starting quarterback. You can make do elsewhere, and at least for a team, if you think about like a team like the Jets in like a high-profile market, or even a team like Jacksonville that has nothing, you're going to sell tickets, you're going to sell jerseys, you're going to be decent. You would hope. I would contend that 99% of the time, no one's worth 3-round picks and 3 first-round picks. Just a quarterback of that level is. In my opinion.
No, like I understand that. So I'm just saying, from the other teams would obviously love to have them, but I just don't see anyone giving up more than like 2 firsts. You know?
I mean, a lot of teams
hard.
Really, and a lot of teams to give up 3 first-round picks. You're talking about vesting 3 years, because you'd have to give up. I mean, unless you can get a team that has one of the few teams that has 2 this year. So, it's like, then what do you do if you're Houston? You're not really getting any return on investment quickly enough, anyway. You know. And one of those picks, we've always said this too, is one of those picks is going to have to go to a goddamn quarterback anyway, right? Like, you're going to have to.
Why not take the shot on Justin Fields or, Zach Wilson? Obviously, because Trevor's gone. But like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, if Jets are going to move on,
they should. I don't think they are.
Yeah, I don't think they are either. Unless he's going to Colts. Unless Darnold.
No, I actually, my one coworker is a huge Jets fan, so he was kind of being like, what are we supposed to do with the 2nd pick? And I think it's the unpopular move down. But I think you should pay attention, especially for fantasy purposes, to the Jets are going to take a receiver with one of those picks, probably, especially if they get more. That receiver's got some potential. I know, was it Mims from Baylor? Mm-hmm. We talked about him last year, and he didn't really pan out, but nobody on the Jets panned out this year.
It's hard to take any stock in any of the stuff that the Jets
I think
did
if you
this year.
and I think even from him, like, I think if they get a high-end one like Chase or, Devontae Smith, you could see a lot of production there, and from Mims too. So,
you think they take Smith at 102, or you think they'd move back?
No, I think they'll trade back. I think if they don't trade back, they should take the kid from the tackle from Oregon. And just lock up
whatever his name.
Yeah, and just lock up tackles for 10 years, kind of thing. But if they can get any amount of capital and move back to, like, I looked at it, something like the Lions at like 7, where you move back, you let them move up, take like Justin Fields. If they are going to move on from Stafford, which that would be awesome, because he would be a fantasy monster if he was on a different team.
So how would you guys feel
if you got back to there, then I would take a receiver.
How would you guys feel about Deshaun Watson in a blue, white, and red Patriots jersey next year? What do you think? You don't want it?
I just don't think it would happen.
Really? I mean, they have an early pick this year, right?
No, they have like the 15th overall pick.
Yeah, it's not that high.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, it's surprising. It's not. They won enough games at the end of the year.
You don't think that? You just don't think they?
Yeah, I don't think that's how Belichick works. I don't think he invests that much into skilled positions up there. I think he invests.
I think after this year he might.
He'll waste his 1st and 2nd round pick on total whiffs, and then he'll draft some quarterback in the 3rd. That'll
be okay. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's so funny how good that team's been and how bad they've drafted the past couple of years. It's crazy.
And that's the thing too, is I think to get Deshaun Watson, you'd have to give up more capital than Belichick's willing to. Like Jim said, you're gonna have to give up your first, and then if you don't give up another first next year, which you probably will have to, you're gonna have to give up like seconds and thirds, and that's where he makes his money is those back half picks. So he's not gonna want to give up as much capital as required.
I think,
at least in my opinion.
I think 3 firsts are the measuring stick, and here's why. You see elite talent like Jamal Adams and Khalil Mack get traded for 2 first-round picks. Granted, for some dumb reason, the Raiders had to include a second-round pick in order to get another first-round pick from the Bears. But when you're looking at the most important position in football, and like Dan said, that's 25 years old and is already locked into a long-term agreement, and you don't know what the fluctuation is of the salary cap long-term from this COVID pandemic, where many people are declining in that salary cap, to know that you're going to have those things flexible to your standard, I think that's going to be beneficial and appealing to teams to have that talent locked in, for the long term. I think the team to watch out personally for Deshaun Watson, I think is going to be San Francisco. 49ers have had an affinity for trading high draft picks to get win-now players, such as D Ford a couple of years ago. I think, that team is pretty locked and loaded, and I think is almost a quarterback away from getting from where they need to go. Their defensive line looks really good. Might need to tighten up a few spots on the offensive line, but I think San Francisco, to me, is one of the leaders in the clubhouse to position to get them, possibly.
I just don't think I mean, that would be an insane fit. That would be dynasty type shit right away. I don't think they have the capital to go get him or the players unless you want to part with a bunch of your tried and true talents. It's going to require a team that has a ton of draft. Yeah, it's going to take a team that has a ton of draft capital. The other thing too is going in somebody like San Francisco. They have a ton of players looking to be signed within the next 2 to 3 years, so you might not have the cap space. As where somebody like the Jets, somebody like the Lions, they have the cap space. Even like the Tua one actually made a ton of sense because Miami has that kind of draft capital to bring him in and then keep their picks. And you give them
and they're good
Tua,
now,
and
too.
you give them a first, and you give them a second. Then you're you're going, okay, but that really works for both teams, and both teams have the draft capital to make that work. So I would think somebody like them, the Dolphins, and kind of piggybacking on Ross, I would love to see Stafford, which apparently now they're keeping Stafford, so that's fine in Detroit. I would have loved to see Stafford go to San Francisco, and then the Lions move up and the Jets move down, and a bunch of shuffling around included in the Deshaun Watson stuff. But yeah, I mean, San Francisco would be amazing for both parties. I just don't know if they can make that happen.
And I don't think they're going to move off of Garoppolo that easily either. I mean, he's been hurt. Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but I mean, he seems to, when he plays, they win. I mean, they were the Super Bowl last year. I mean,
true, and they had so many injuries this year that I don't know if you're going to pass judgment on.
Yeah, the injuries were crazy this year.
Deebo Samuel was out for the bulk of the year. Their running backs are gone, so he was fighting an uphill battle. I'm just saying, a lot of the chatter was that they were going to move on from him. And if you could get somebody like Stafford or somebody like Deshaun Watson, you would, but I just don't know if they can make it happen.
Yeah.
So this year, what was the surprises for you, whether in fantasy or on the football field for teams? So like, just to give you an example, like, so fantasy wise for me, it was, I set up to try and rely on Hayden Hurst for tight end position and a lot of stuff. And he definitely shitted on me. But like, that was a letdown. And then go.
You could blow that way bigger and say all of Atlanta Falcons were kind of a surprise. I didn't think any of them were going to be as bad as they were. And given Julio and Riley Ridley we're still really good, but that team, I didn't expect that team to be that bad, and players like Hayden Hurst, who should have plugged and played at Austin Hooper's position, to be that lacking in production. So I would agree with that, but I would blow it up.
Step down for Matt Ryan. Big step down for Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I don't mean to say it too. I said I thought he was sunsetting this year, and he definitely did. Like, we talk about Breeze and Brady, kind of looking older and getting on.
Yeah.
Because they're in the playoffs, but Matt Ryan that career might be over. They got to go to the backup. When you got a tried and true backup like Matt Schaub, you got to go for it, man. You got to put in Matt Schaub and make it happen. You don't. That was a joke.
And then on the field, Cam Newton, man,
bad,
done.
Bad.
You know what's funny is, I mean, we have Jim too, but I have a couple other Patriots fans, and after that first game, like week 1,
I was so
like, oh man, Cam Newton, bro. And that was such a quick honeymoon. That was not good.
Yeah. For me, I think my big surprise, even maybe it shouldn't have been a big surprise, but it was mostly like Deontay Johnson had an insane year in a team that I thought it was Juju's team, and then the rest of the receivers were going to be grasping at straws. I knew they'd be better with Ben back, but I mean, Deontay Johnson had like 145 targets this year.
It's pretty ridiculous.
144 targets, 88 receptions, almost 1,000 yards. I mean, that's crazy because him and James Washington and Chase Claypool, I didn't know who was going to be the number 2 on that team behind Juju as far as fantasy relevance. But
Juju.
yeah, and it was Deontay and Juju's 2, I guess. I mean, and it'll be interesting to see where they kind of go next year too, because Juju will. I'm thinking he's probably not going to be there next year. I think he'd like to stay, but if he's going to chase the money, he'll be somewhere else, I think.
Yeah, and I think you got to wait to see what happens with, from a fantasy perspective too. What happens with those other players? Like, is Ben Roethlisberger and Maurkice Pouncey, are they both retiring?
Yeah, that's the other thing.
If
they probably will.
Yeah, it might be one of those things where he might make more money elsewhere and not want to go through a rebuild. One of my big surprises, after week 17 and into the playoffs, it's a kind of old hat that we're kind of aware of it. But the Eagles fan that's sitting next to me, well, not sitting next to me, but next to me, that the NFC East was that bad. That was so surprising. Like, I swear, when Ross before the season made the Alex Smith prediction, which, like, that was impressive.
Well done.
The reason I didn't think shit of that was because I thought Cowboys, Eagles, even the other 2 teams were all going to be minimum decent. And even the Cowboys before Dak got hurt were horseshit. And the Eagles were horseshit. Like, those were not good football teams. And even the Giants, who were supposed to take steps forward, I know Saquon was hurt, but Daniel Jones, we immediately have to start thinking, like, is he the option? Is he the guy? Their receiving core didn't play up to par. Every one of them seemed frustrated at the end of the year. Their defense played well. The Redskins were easily the best team in that division with their 4th string quarterback. What? That doesn't make any sense. 4th string quarterback?
It's that. It's got to be that defense, right?
I agree with you that it's that defense, but the fact that the Eagles and the Cowboys, like I said, the Giants, to be expected. I thought for sure. I would have to go back and watch the episode, the preseason episode we did. I thought the Cowboys and the Eagles were both going to be like minimum 10-6.
I had the Redskins in 4th place. I had them.
They were terrible
in the division. Yeah, it was.
I didn't
was just shocking
in the league anymore.
Yeah, but that was the thing too, is even from, and then if you take it one step further to the fantasy perspective, like every player, who was the best fantasy producer in the NFC East? Miles Sanders, probably.
Ugh.
No, not even. He wasn't even that good that year.
Right? But like, who was it?
Amari Cooper, CD?
No,
the whole division? Think about it at the beginning of the year if I would have told you that. And you would have been Miles Sanders, Zeke, Saquon, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Jalen Reagor,
Antonio Gibson, maybe?
Antonio
or
Gibson,
McKissick?
Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin might be it. That's just insane. That's nuts how bad. Like, I get it. 17 after hearing it, the talking heads on TV for 17 weeks say that division sucks. It's old hat, but it is true. Like, no one thought that before the season. That was so surprising.
Yeah. That's a good question. Who the biggest guy? I mean, Terry McLaurin was decent. The running backs in Washington were like surprisingly
were they
decent when they played that. Antonio Gibson ended up with 11 touchdowns, and J.D.
Yeah.
McKissick had 80 receptions.
If only somebody could call Antonio Gibson before the season as like, a great running back.
The running back, I mean, the rookie running backs this year were interesting because there's a lot of hype on Keyshawn Vaughn as well. And did he even play at all this year, or was he
Played a little?
Fournette going there kind of screwed it up, but
yeah,
he was.
No, it's a good point, Trev. There was, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the obvious one, and Jonathan Taylor, you can speak more on it, but he kind of middled around for a half a season, but then at the end of the year, you have to be happy with where you're going. So the top ones are kind of good. And then you have a lot of guys who, you got to figure out what their futures are going to be. I think there's a lot of guys with a lot of potential. I like where Zach Moss is sitting at in Buffalo. He just needs to get the injury bug. There's other guys, like you said, Keyshawn Vaughn, who's sitting now behind two guys who are potential All-Pros. You saw a guy, I know Jim will harp on it later, but Joshua Kelly at the beginning of the year, it was kind of like, oh, this bet is going one way. Yeah. And he's a non-factor, healthy scratches at the end of the year. So there's some guys whose futures are completely up in the air in terms of what they're going to do. So I agree with you. It was a definite hit and miss for rookie running backs.
Yeah, well, speaking of Joshua Kelly, let's get it in right now. Thank you for the money, Dane. And it was very nice to feel like I had lost a bet halfway through the season. and then remember why I take bets in the beginning.
Wow. When you're a rookie and you fumble a couple times, that is a quick move to the bench.
Yeah, I mean, and I know he says that we're an echo chamber, but this echo chamber was on the money this time, gotta say.
The thing is, you can say it's an echo chamber. We rarely agree. We rarely agree with each other. I constantly think
we're for Joshua Kelly
on most subjects. But when you're the one person saying anything, does that make the rest of the world an echo chamber? If everybody's telling you he's not that good, is the planet Earth the echo chamber and Dane's just the one that isn't? Like, I don't,
3.2 yards per carry.
I mean, I'll put it out there now, guys, just for anyone. Like, I'm always willing to throw down money. I might not try and go exorbitant amounts, but like when I have a strong opinion and somebody has a different one, it's not to insult anybody or anything, but I'm willing to put the money to really hammer down whether we really believe these things.
Russ, what do you got for your surprise of the year?
Yeah. So I have a couple. So two talents from a fantasy level that really stuck out to me. One, I'll just say that he took an even more massive jump than I think any of us thought maybe. Stephon Diggs looked phenomenal this year. He was like heads and shoulders and elevated his game.
Number one receiver.
You go from Kirk Cousins to Josh Allen.
The quarterback also made a huge step forward. Jim can attest to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was really impressed with what Stephon did outside of the shadows of Adam Thielen because I think we had some questions and reservations. Could he do stuff on his own as a premier talent versus being surrounded by another elite receiver? And I think Stephon Diggs really proved a lot of people wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
If I said to you guys right now, who was the third best running back in fantasy based on points this year, who was it?
Third best. Standard PPR? What are we?
We're going to go PPR.
Let's see. Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook are 1-2.
1 and 2. So then maybe James Robinson.
Derrick Henry's up there too.
Derrick Henry.
Correction. Fourth. You got the top three right.
James Robinson.
Melvin Gordon.
The fourth best running back based on fantasy points scored was David Montgomery this year for the Bears.
Wow.
Where a lot of people were killing him before the season started or halfway through that. Nobody wanted him to be a part of it. And then it seemed like when Mitchell Trubisky came back and took the starting job from Nick Foles, that's when Montgomery got humming again, and Montgomery's career's been a little shaky and so forth, but like for him to finish as the fourth best running back, I thought was pretty damn impressive as far as given how his up and down season looked overall. And then another name I just also want to highlight too, for as crazy of up and down year Jonathan Taylor had, he finished as the 5th best running back ahead of James Robinson as well.
He had a great end of the year, Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
Going back to David Montgomery, I think that it's a testament to two things about fantasy football, and that is being a bell cow running back and injuries. Because if Tariq Cohen's in that offense, David Montgomery's numbers are down towards running back two positions.
I also think it's a matter of, not an indictment, but a commentary on how the drop off was. Is the top 3 guys were true bell cows. Even David Montgomery, I wouldn't classify him as a bell cow.
He's on the field a lot. He was on the field a lot.
Yeah, but like you just said, if Tariq Cohen wasn't hurt, he wouldn't have been. So, like, he's forced into that position, but the term bell cow means that, like, you're their option all the time, where he's not. And I think that's the thing is I do think it's a degree of there was a big drop-off after those first 3 guys. Even to something like Aaron Jones in Green Bay, like, he had 2 other guys there kind of cherry-picking out stuff from him. It's good, but I would be intrigued to see the average and the ratings. I bet there's a significant drop-off from 3 to 4 in terms of what he was producing compared to the guys. He probably wasn't that close to 3, but he was probably really close to number 5 kind of thing. And Jonathan Taylor, I totally agree. I liked him out of college. I thought he was good. I thought it would take him a little while to get his footing, but he's got a lot of potential. They need a quarterback, but
we'll figure that out hopefully.
Montgomery, just real quick, the last 3 weeks of the season were 88% on the field, 83% on the field, 83% on the field. So just being the only running back on the field with a quarterback that gets scared and dumps it off a lot, he ends up being,
Then,
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is the terminology. He's being forced into that role, which means like what we're saying is going forward, what you want out of that player. He's not going to be that. He's not going to be that. Like when they have other guys back, they've made it known that he's a part of the running back. Yes, he's on the field for 80% of the plays when they don't have any other options.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Other healthy running backs.
He fell into that situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
But he's still a bell cow at the end of the year. Maybe he won't be next year, but that's kind of the role he ends up in.
And then another interesting.
If we're talking about, sorry, Ross. If we're talking about this year, I agree with you. I'm just talking about going forward. Go ahead.
And then another interesting stat, I believe Nick Chubb missed about 4 or 6 games this year, someone in that range. He only finished 11 points lower than Kareem Hunt did for the entire season.
Yeah.
Dude, you want to hear one of my favorite stats? And I know I'm a Nick Chubb homer. Do you know they showed it in the playoff game, so everybody probably knows this already, but it's the best stat. Did you see what his average per rush was in the fourth quarter?
Like 10.5 yards.
It was 10 yards a carry in the fourth quarter. That dude gets so strong as the game goes on. It's such a big fan. I'm not the one to talk about him because I've loved him when he was at Georgia. He was like my favorite back, and I only had him at the highest ranking. So, but yeah, he was great.
Probably,
yeah.
No, go ahead, Dan.
No, I think he's one of those younger backs that the sky's kind of the limit for. And I've gone around a little bit. I actually like the system now. I was worried that in the beginning of the year, I kind of made a commentary on when they signed Kareem Hunt to the extension. I was like, oh man, like if you do this, you better be careful because you don't want to force him out because the one of the two that you don't want to lose is Chubb. But seeing their dynamic, I'm kind of like all in on that offense and going, man, you have both those guys,
It works.
It works really well. Baker Mayfield was able to make a turnaround as a quarterback, which is so rare. And I still think he's got a lot of growing to do, but he was terrible. Baker Mayfield was terrible, but it shows you give him a good running game, a decent receiving core without Odell Beckham, and good tight ends, an awesome O-line. Anybody could be a little bit more successful when you do that stuff around them.
You do have to add in with Cleveland. So we decided last year, we were like, cool, we're going to be Cleveland fans.
This was like 3 years ago.
Was that or 2 years ago?
It was a while ago.
We're like, we're going to get on the underdog train and enjoy cheering for this team there together collectively. And every time the Browns started doing good stuff, we're like, oh, okay, cool, whatever.
Right.
We're not Browns fans, by the way, even though we tried to be. You just couldn't. It's so
I
bad.
like the Browns. They have a lot, but I think I like the Browns because they're like a college all-star team. It's like all these players I loved watching in college. They've really done an excellent job drafting. So
imagine they hadn't traded all those picks for Odell Beckham. By the way, just think how good that team would be.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the one thing they were really missing at the end of the year was somebody take the roof off it. And if he comes back, and the thing about Odell is he only wants to play for a team that's good. So when they were kind of sputtering at the beginning of the year and they were talking about trading him, it was kind of now that they're good. And if he can buy back in, that is the one thing they were missing. And they get back, think about it. They get back Odell Beckham. They drafted Grant Delpit out of LSU last year and didn't even get to play him. He got hurt.
And Greedy Williams.
Greedy Williams was hurt the whole year. Yeah. Their D-line, I forget, one of them was hurt. Olivier Vernon was hurt at the end of the year. They had a lot of injuries, like we said with everybody else. They could be way better next year.
Yeah.
When you talk about teams like the Steelers, and I know we got some Steelers fans in our league, but if the Steelers are kind of going in one direction, if those people do retire, the Browns are. It's corny to say because everybody said it during that playoff game. Oh, there's no losers. Yeah, there's fucking losers. But
I think Pittsburgh's biggest weakness was their O-line more than anything this year.
Yeah.
I think it was how much their team was undisciplined and a bunch of shitheads. That's actually what I think it was. I think
Corvette.
I think they're a bunch. I do. I think they're undisciplined. I think this went back to the Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown stuff. I like Mike Tomlin. I think he's a great all-time coach. I think he's losing a bit of control of the team. So I think they got to get their shit under control and they'll be all right. But they're right now, I kind of feel like their team is I don't know. I just don't like their attitude in a lot of spots.
And then I would say one other surprise that really stuck out to me on a whole NFL level was the Seattle Seahawks offense really confused me this year.
Brian Schottenheimer.
Oh, I get it. I know Schottenheimer from my Colts days with Andrew Luck. It's like
Jekyll and Hyde.
Weird to see how that it was so Jekyll and Hyde and how that team operated that they have all this talent, and Dan, you're the biggest DK lover I know on this podcast and stuff.
They don't feed him the ball,
and
he got fed the ball this year.
Dude, go watch their games. Go watch their games. It was comical though. There'd be games where they wouldn't feed him and then when they did, he was so explosive, but his targets wouldn't be that high. But his catches were awesome. Like, he'd have good receptions, good yardage, but his targets, go look at his targets. It's not as much as you'd want it to be. I contend so many people made a big deal or make a big deal about quarterbacks falling off. Russell Wilson, for the first 4 or 5 games, was MVP bar none. Bar none. Let Russ cook, right? Bar none, everyone said he was the best. He was terrible the back half of the season. Like, what happened there? So it was just one of those things where I totally agree with you. And when their offense sputtered a little bit, their defense just wasn't good enough to keep up at all.
Right.
So
he actually ended up with less targets than Tyler Lockett.
I love DK, and I think he's one of the top receivers potentially in the game. They've got to find a way to get him the ball more consistently. If you look at their playoff game, he didn't get a target for the first half, and he was getting irritated. And then when they fed him the ball, he's got 2 long touchdowns. It's like you can't. Some of the receivers of his size and his if you look at Julio, DeAndre, I'm not comparing him to those guys yet. You can't not get them in the game. You just feed them the ball no matter what, and they just impose their will on people. They aren't doing that. Their play calling was so bad, and Russ wasn't playing nearly well enough that it was the oddest situation.
It's Schottenheimer.
And now, and now there's these rumors though of Adam Gase taking the offensive coordinator position. We've seen this story before.
Yeah.
Guy gets another chance because Peyton Manning made him legendary in his entire career, and here he is.
It's funny how often. So I'll make one of my predictions and one of my observations. It's always surprising. My dad has always said this to me. How the coaches are like nomads. He's like, it's ridiculous. He's like, you don't get one job. He's like, you get fired, you go somewhere else, and then you move back up. But they just move around, and nothing ever changes. What makes you, as a Dallas fan, what makes you want to hire Mike McCarthy? And then, it's like I said, I was excited when we hired Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator, but then they hired Dan Quinn's secondary coach, who was the secondary coach under McCarthy in Green Bay, and then was the secondary coach under Quinn in Atlanta. So it was like, oh, perfect fit. Yeah, but in Green Bay, they had Al Harris, they had Charles Woodson, they had a bunch of good players. Their secondary was never that good with all those players. Last year, for the Falcons had the 27th ranked defensive secondary. That guy gets hired? Why does he get a job? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's the same thing. If you're the Lions, they're saying one of the lead candidates for the Lions job is Marvin Lewis. You know the ceiling there. You know what his ceiling is. You don't want to go out and get Robert Saleh or Eric Bieniemy or Urban Meyer. Those are good hires. Like, whether you like Urban Meyer or not, they're going for it. Robert Saleh is a great hire for the Jets. Eric Bieniemy will be a great hire wherever he goes.
If he goes
guys
anywhere.
like Wink Martindale or some of those other coordinators, you take a guy who's never had a chance. You get these guys that have had chances and not performed. Why? That always surprises me at the end of every year. So that's one of my big observations about the league in general.
So worth noting, DK was 15th in the league in targets. He had 129. So he did get targeted a fair amount. Do you guys know who the number 10 receiver was for targets?
So if you have DK, you think you want him 15th in the league in targets? I'd want him in the top 5.
I mean, maybe. I mean, they also Tyler Lockett also ended up getting more targets than him. He was 132.
Was Tyler Lockett number 10?
Was Tyler Lockett what?
Number 10?
No, Tyler Lockett was number 13. Number 10 is someone that was on nobody's radar at all in fantasy football.
Keelan Cole.
No.
Hunter Renfrow.
No. Although, funny story, Darren Waller was tied for 6th.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he had 145 targets. So 10th was Carolina Panthers.
Robbie Anderson. And
he was quiet. He had over 1,000 yards, but he only had 3 touchdowns.
My Hunter Renfrow thing is better. That's more shocking. Hunter Renfrow's at 6.
No. Darren Waller's at 6.
Oh, okay.
Renfrow, I don't know. He's probably not even.
If he's in the top 30, it's
he is not. He's not in the top 50.
Oh, I thought you said he was 6. I was like, oh my god.
No. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually like where they're going. I like Matt Rule. I thought they started the season really well and then kind of slipped off, but I like that. Carolina's got some good pieces going forward.
It's also partially McCaffrey not being there.
Yeah, and Robbie Anderson, in my opinion, is a definitive 2, and I think DJ Moore is who's got to elevate. Like, I think DK is on Dame's team, and Dame has said it a couple times that he's like a number 1, and he's a Maryland kid, so I'm always going to be a fan.
Yeah,
but if he's going to be a 1, he's got to be a 1. He's not a definitive 1 right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So what are we thinking is going to be heading into this offseason? The top 4 teams in our fantasy league, because we did it last year, and last year we said Dane, Shane, Treb, and Dan Morschauser.
And to be fair, I did put you in that top list, Jim, because I was like, Jim's going to surprise some people.
Well, the other thing too is Jim didn't have anything. At the end of the year, Jim he had all those draft picks, which were a lot of his team.
Right.
So if you would have done it after the draft, Jim could have been higher. I still think it's fairly similar. I think Dane's team has got a lot of potential. I think it's the same. I really don't have, I know Ron is terrible.
and let's not count out Shane had the second most points in the league this year going in without Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. So I mean, we can't forget about him.
Dane didn't have Saquon, and Dane had a really good year too. But but that's the thing is, I'm not trying to. I had Zeke, but with the injuries on their offensive line, I basically didn't have Zeke for the bulk of the year. He was like at best a top 20 back. Now, I know that's better than nothing, but it's not what you want.
Yeah, he definitely fell off at the end of the year. It was
the offense was just so bad. I will be intrigued by Jim's team because I still think I get it. Jim was in the finals and Jim's team is good. I'm not going to pull punches. Jim's team was good mostly because of Dalvin fucking Cook. Dalvin Cook had a ridiculous year. So without Dalvin Cook, those rookies have got to come on a bit more than they have. Now,
Yeah.
Mark Ingram getting cut is a big deal. I think that's good. That's a good sign for Dobbins. But
Oh
if
yeah.
Swift at the end of the year, Swift looked good. I'm just saying, without Dalvin Cook, you need somebody to really step up. He had a monster year. So, that trade was a game changer for your and Markov's team. So,
Yeah, well, I mean that's like a sell high trade that happened. I
I'm
know.
not saying it's bad.
No, yeah, no. Well, I mean, everybody's got different opinions on it, and like in regards to that trade, if I was in Markov's shoes, I wouldn't have done that trade. But it's Markov, so I'm gonna send him an offer of he. So let me share a little perspective. It doesn't mean it makes it right that the trade to make other people not have their opinions or something, but like Matt, I don't know how much he researches on newer players and how confident he is with the rookie picks. So like if he's going to get a top 5 dynasty asset, I can see why he chose to do it.
Yeah.
But from a rebuilding perspective, it's probably not the best move.
Yeah, but getting a stud on your team is hard to come by.
And listen, you could basically make the case that Dalvin Cook made your team this year and will win you games. And if you, like you said, if you don't do the research and don't want to, then you don't want to be spending draft picks on people you don't understand. If you know the quantifiable in what Dalvin Cook is, and you have the draft capital, I don't disagree with it. I think he should have held on to like one of the picks. That's all. I don't disagree with the trade. It's a lot to give up for one player. When that one player can flat out win you games, I'm okay with it. I think what was it? Was it how many ones and a second?
It's the 103, the 110, 111, and the 211 or something like that.
So I think it's one of those things where I don't think the second had to be included for any reason. I think if you would have been like 3 first rounders,
yeah,
you probably would have bid anyway. Even if you got out, even if you gave the second and got rid of one of the first and threw in a third or something, you might have still gotten a bite. And that's what I would have an issue with. And I'm not going to speak on it, and I'm not going to say it happened. But I've traded with Matt too to some degree, and with you. If there was no back and forth and no rebuttal, and it was just like this trade offer take, like that's kind of tough because it's like try to make the best out of your trades. That's the one thing.
So just something else to think about, like for this year. I don't know if Betancourt's going into rebuild mode yet, but he's got some pieces that if people are wanting to compete this year in Kamara and Devontae Adams, that those are the type of players that everybody wants to have them on their team, but nobody wants to give up 3 firsts. And
that's the problem.
People are fine to deal these pieces, selling high for 3 firsts. It's just a matter of figuring out what the deals are. You can work something of 2 firsts plus a player plus a third, like different things.
Yeah. That's the tough thing too, is sometimes with players of that magnitude, and this is why the Markov thing still works in my opinion. When you get up there to those players of that magnitude, especially talking about Dalvin Cook and Devontae Adams, who are, arguably the number ones at their position, it's very hard to come to a consensus value. I'm not going to get into the details, but I talked to Betancourt a little bit about at Devontae Adams, and the value is just much different on both sides because it's it's such a high-end player. So it's like you can kind of demand the world because you don't know where the ceiling is above it on value.
So how do you guys feel about it? So in fantasy, selling high, like I everybody wants to buy low, right? So everybody always does that to like raise their floor, try and get up undervalued players to raise it. And then if you think of it like stocks or whatever, but it's so hard for people to sell high that I think everybody should when they can, unless you are like, you have 1 to 2 years left. You are win down. You're one of the top 2 teams.
It depends. Because if you're looking to pick up a stud and you're close to being there, and you could get a guy like Tyreek Hill or Dalvin Cook or Alvin Kamara just put you over the top, is you can trade some of the lower guys because you only start so many players. If I have 6 good receivers, I could trade 2 of them if I'm going to get like a stud running back. Yeah. Well, but that's what I mean. But
yeah.
You have to be able to pay that price. And to have a stud on your team, it's way more value than like having 3 wide receiver teams.
I think
because they win you the championships.
I think there are so many times where people just always focus on winning the trade overall and just getting their bigger piece of the pie more so than what the actual trade is for and what it's about. And there's certainly no problem to be greedy or ask for more or extra and stuff, but it just really convolutes, trade talks overall and having those transparent conversations because, just be direct. This is my price, yes or no. And if not, no worries. But we all have a unique perspective in how we evaluate things, and that there's, no things that are aligned. They say from a general manager perspective in the NFL or in any sport is the best trade is one that hurts both teams.
Like that, let me give an example. Dan, if you don't mind me talking about this, is about Derwin James, right?
Yeah.
So Dan reached out. He was interested in Derwin James. And this was before the deadline, trying to figure out something. Personally, we both like Derwin James for the long term. And safeties, where safeties are valued, right? Like most safeties, even if they're really good, probably shouldn't be worth more than a third. But if you're like, this is one of the top safeties, I think, for, top 10 safety for the next 5-6 years, and you want to have him on the team, do you really want to deal him away for just a third? And then if you're trying to get that, why do you want to pay more than a third? It's a freaking safety, So
and that's why we couldn't come to a consensus trade. Because we both kind of agreed with each other. As you were like, I don't want to part with him for a third, and I was like, I agree with you, but I don't want to give up a second.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it wasn't. Me and Ross had something similar for defensive linemen earlier in the year, where it's the same general concept with defensive with IDP. It's tough because you're right. Like I can refill those positions in the draft. So do I trade picks for him when there could be somebody else in the draft that I want more? That's the thing about the draft is. And this is why I go back to the Markov thing, is I think if you're comfortable in the draft with a lot of picks, like Jim, you clearly are, Ross was, you both were last year, both of you, that's okay if you're willing to do that research. Matt had a lot of draft capital. I'm not saying he is or isn't, but he might not be comfortable with the draft, and he might be like, well, if I have 3 draft picks, I'd rather spend those on a quantifiable product instead of taking those chances. That's okay, especially if, to some degree, we live and breathe it and we love fantasy, but other people, he could be like, listen, he's like, I don't have the time to do that. I would rather take the draft capital that I've built up and buy in on something that I know. That's okay. That's why I don't look at that trade as bad, because he could have built up with all that draft capital based on the assumption that he was going to take the best deal he could get for those draft picks. That's okay. It's that sad fantasy time where fantasy's over and you're seeing the turnover on rosters. That's brutal, where it's it's a business. Peace out, every guy that we don't need. Like the Ravens, Black Friday, that they were Ingram, Robert Griffin. It's kind of brutal where you're reminded it's a business, and a lot of the guys, you're sitting there looking at your roster, and I'm like, all right, I don't love Mark Ingram, but he's a viable RB2 in the right situation. Oh, he's now not playing football anymore. It's brutal,
Especially at running back. Especially at running back. It's
so it's. And it's the reverse of it's true too. Is Jim sitting there going, man, I really like the future J.K. Dobbins. Oh well, the future's right now because they just cut their all-pro running back. It's like, okay, huge benefit. So, it's sometimes it's brutal to think, how quickly things go south on these players.
Dan, I also just want to say how much I love Cam Akers too, on top of John State.
Yeah. So I'm a Florida. I liked Florida State when he was there, and I had him in 3 other leagues, and it was just one of those things where, I was high on him, and at the beginning of the year he was one of those players where you're kind of like, why aren't they playing him? They don't have anything else. He would be their best choice. And then but I feel like for a lot of rookies, it's just a waiting game until you get your chance, and then.
Yeah, and that was especially apparent this year because it was the beginning of the year. They're like, okay, we got these guys really high, Taylor really high, Dobbins really high, Akers really high in redraft leagues, and then they come out and you end up cutting them after week 4 because you're like, Akers didn't even play. Well, and then by the end of the year, now Taylor's a top 10 dynasty asset, Dobbins is a top 10 dynasty asset. These guys, by the end of the year, they figure it out.
Well, I'll tell you one of my favorite moves, one of my favorite things, and this isn't meant to be a slight. But it was kind of one of those, what's he thinking, is Schramm's team trying to rebuild it. About 3/4 of the way through the year, he cut A.J. Dillon. And I was like, and I spent a ton of money to pick him up because I was like, what are we doing cutting him?
Nice.
That was a good pick.
And I was like, that's shocking. Like, because they're both, yeah.
Damn.
And both their other running backs are in contract years. And I'm like, and at the end of the year, lo and behold, he looked like a freight train.
I'll be very happy to see it when Aaron Jones re-signs with the Packers for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but dude, even if Aaron Jones resigns, that means they're not going to resign. What's his
Jamal
name?
Williams.
Like, they're
Jamal
not going to
Williams.
resign both. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Right now, both those, like Aaron Jones and why can't I remember his name? Who's his number 2?
Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams. They're both viable fantasy options, right? Like right now, for the most part. Yes, Aaron Jones is insane, but you want Jamal on your roster.
Yeah.
They're not. If they sign one, they're not going to sign the other. You know.
Yeah. And that's kind of consensus. And Aaron Jones is going to command a decent amount of money, I think, just based on his stats.
And I would agree with you. Yeah, if they sign, it's not as good. But if he doesn't re-sign and AJ Dillon moves up into that one spot, it's kind of crazy.
It's also interesting because like this incoming rookie class, like there will be some running backs, but supposedly it's a little more depleted than normal about like value running backs. So the free agent running backs will have more value this year to teams than normal.
You know what's crazy?
Aaron Jones could get more money elsewhere.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy is who's going to be a viable fantasy option for like another 3 years is Adrian Peterson.
Somehow.
I still got him. It's crazy. He just keeps showing up.
Yeah. Frank Gore might just play another year too. Who knows?
Yeah. But yeah, it's
running back on the Jets.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Jim. I was funny because both of your young whippersnappers at J.K. Dobbins and Swift, I had the old men behind them. I had Ingram and Adrian Peterson.
I was such a huge Swift. Like going into this past year, Swift was my number 1. And then but understanding how like everybody else's rookie boards were shaping out, I just wanted to try and get Swift no matter what and just find the best value. I just wanted Swift all over the place. I like him so much.
Yeah.
I like that. I actually, my number 1, I don't know if I ever told you that my number 1 on my board was J.K. Dobbins. Actually, J.K. Dobbins, in my opinion, was the only 3-down back in that class.
I only drafted Dobbins because a ton of people had him as their number 1, not because I believed.
There was one time where me and you were talking in person. I think it was at my work, and you had come in, and I remember it was like early on, and I don't know if you saw the pissed off nature of my face because I was kind of like trying to gauge where Dobbins was going to go, and I was like, all right, so you have these picks. Who are you going to go? And like the first, you're like, well, I'm probably going to take J.K. Dobbins. Like with my person, I'm like, motherfucker! Like I was so pissed. Like I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, there goes all of that hope.
But I was trying to help everybody to figure out if trades are going to happen by going like, this is what I'm doing with my 4 picks. I don't care.
Yeah.
Here's the 4 picks. If we're going to make something happen, you know what to do. You know.
It's funny. Like, I'm still waiting on Ruggs. I still like Ruggs. He was the epitome of, if we just go through that draft, there's some guys that right away people know. Like I think if you had, Jonathan Taylor, I want to say the jury's still out, but you're very excited. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that's a home run already. But there's a lot of guys like when you get to that back half of that first round, Henry Ruggs, I'm like, I love what I see out of him. It's just not there nearly enough. And that's where we get it. I'm not harping back at the Markov thing, but those back half of that first round, I'm excited about him, but I'm just as excited about my 2 second rounders also.
Yeah, and like just to put stuff out there with the 103, because just the early projected ones are 1 and 2 are going to be running backs in some order of Travis Etienne, Najee Harris. And then it's like choice between Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith. I know you guys don't want to say anything. I'm just going to talk about this shit because I love talking about it. But
I mean, consensus top 4, I would say.
And then somebody will say Jalen Waddle is somewhere. It's like those 3 receivers in some order based upon people's context.
Yep.
But the point is at 103, I'm snapping off Jamar Chase if one of those 2.
I have no first round pick this year because this is my my Fournette year. Yeah, you got to remember.
What I'm getting at is that if Jamar Chase is on the board there at 103, I'm willing to deal that pick, guys, because
what do you want?
I'm looking. So basically,
Dan will offer you Leonard Fournette.
I've already offered something, or I haven't offered
my
something.
seconds.
I've talked with Ross in regards to trading back a little bit in the first round because I am tight and needy. And like the problem with this year's rookie draft class is Kyle Pitts, and like I think people are going to overshoot on him. And so like I want to trade back some, but not heavy. Or if I'm going to trade this pick, I want it to be a tight end of sorts as well as like extra stuff, you know. But that's kind of where I'm going at with trying to work something, because I don't. There's other people talking about rookie drafts. Kyle Pitts going to 109, 110, 111. I mean, that's going to be. It's possible, but like there's probably like 7 or 8 running backs, receivers in a certain echelon. Then you have like Trevor Lawrence if people want to overshoot, you know, into the first, and then Pitts, you know. So it's somewhere up to the 110 is Trevor Lawrence and Pitts based upon how people are going to overshoot. And I'm trying to make sure I either get Pitts, but I don't want to spend the 103 on him. You know,
it also depends on landing spot. Like there's
this is deep. This is deep water pre-draft that I'm just not ready. Like I'll tell you, those top 5 guys are, for me, written in stone. Those receivers, all 3 of those receivers are nasty. I actually don't like either one of those running backs until I watch more tape. But I'm not willing to go that deep into it. I actually would be. I would actually have a question for the 3 of you, and I don't mean to change the subject, Tim. If you have more you want to talk on the draft.
Okay.
So if you couldn't pick somebody that you drafted, but somebody who you had the opportunity to draft, whether it was like in the 5 picks before you, it could be anybody pretty much that's not on your team. Name a rookie from this year that you regret not getting a hold of, basically in the draft or through early trades.
Justin Jefferson, week 4. I reached out week 4 or week 5. I reached out to Treb and I said, "I'll give you Jerry Jeudy straight up for Justin Jefferson right now."
Yeah, and
I still don't like what I see out of him. I still don't.
You don't like what you see out of Justin Jefferson?
Yeah.
I mean, he had the best rookie season of all time for a wide receiver. I don't know how you can.
I know, and that's the thing is, I'm not speaking on how good. He's just going to be one of those guys where I'm constantly like, I'm not seeing this. Like he has drops. He's not a good route runner. He's not physical.
The other thing is, you see it, yeah. Well, but that's the thing is, you're seeing it from a full football perspective versus a fantasy football perspective.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fantasy running backs and receivers that have insane careers fantasy wise that don't have insane careers playing wise. So
yeah, I agree. And this was the conversation I kind of had with you, Treb, when we were taking our 2 guys around that exact spot. Was I was basically like. And it's funny because I'm saying, like, I would still rather have Ruggs, which is insane. By the stats this year, that's insane. But I still like my pick more because I just don't like Justin Jefferson. And it was one of those things at that time where I was like, I'm going to take Ruggs because I like him more. And I know Treb wants Justin Jefferson right behind me. You know? It
went Ruggs, Rager, Justin Jefferson, and I think I had them all just about in the same team.
Yeah.
I think
same thing, and I get it, and I get that I look stupid right now because I'm saying I don't like him, and you're right, he had an insane season, but like I said, from a football perspective, I don't like what I see out of him, and I just don't, and I get it. Thielen was hurt, Cook had a ton of carries, but he had a ton of volume, and I didn't like, what I saw, and I didn't like his attitude a lot. Like when the second people started calling him good, he was all over Twitter, he was all over Instagram talking himself up, and I'm just like, I don't know, like I just. There's something there I don't like, but I get what you're saying, Jim, too. He's insanely productive. So, yeah, but yeah, you could have had him too. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Ross, who do you think you wanted to get that you had the opportunity to miss out on?
I mean, I told you this before. It's a no-brainer. I'd rather have taken Jefferson over Rager, and I was initially my thought process with it, but I was leaning more towards what draft boards and not trusting my gut more so than I made that pick because, looking
Rager
at the
sucks.
situation with Philadelphia. Shut up, Dan!
I'm aiming at a Treb.
Well, do you want to talk about also Justin Jefferson, about how you passed on his value?
I mean,
yeah.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I should have trusted my gut, and it's probably the one guy that I wish I didn't pass on. The other guy that I said during the draft review that I was high on, and that we all, some of you guys questioned, was Chase Claypool. Looks really good too. Just the explosionness that we've seen of him in that. I think he went late second round, early third, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Draft. But his size and strength. The only thing is, when Ben retires, which presumably is next year because he's going to play out his final contract, what does Chase Claypool look after that? Is it the time to sell on all those Pittsburgh guys like Deontay Johnson and Claypool possibly from a dynasty perspective? Because you don't know what you're going to get after Ben Roethlisberger. Is Mr. Sell High, Mr. Candiolka is shaking his head yes over there. I think it's definitely an interesting question for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Not Canziolka. I've known you for over a decade.
I'll give you the Chase Claypool one. That one is pretty surprising, and it's weird too because I look at him now and I'm like, what was my whole thing is that I like big receivers, I like big receivers with huge catch radius, and I'm like, what were we looking at? That dude should have been high on everyone's board. So I'll give you that one.
It's a crowd. It was a crowded wide receiver room.
Totally.
I mean, he was going
and
into
even
it
that,
as the number 4.
I think you could go through it and say that repeatedly. I think a lot of people could say Brandon Ayuk, the fact that he got to the second round with me and Ross. I like Laviska Shenault in the second round that I got. There's a lot of guys in there that, there were so many receivers.
Dude, Shenault might be not at the time the best pick just because of what was on the team, but because Trevor Lawrence going there now, what might actually happen.
It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up.
Yeah. It was that's why I was asking the question, because it was a really interesting year and there were so many receivers, and the receivers caused running backs to get highly valued, and there's a lot of people who took running backs higher than certain running, so it was one of those things where you look back, and even defensive players it was a tough year to kind of predict because there was so much in such specific positions.
And Antonio Gibson is another one that
we were such idiots talking about.
Well, I mean, and part of it too was this was also that draft happened before the running back got a DUI and kicked off the team.
Yeah,
and
before the season, and he got kicked off the team. Also, Bryce Love's injury never went away. He kept having swelling in his knee. So, there was a lot of questions in that back. Plus, the quarterback is terrible, which we were kind of questioning. Whether he was going to be good. There was a lot of questions there that got answered.
What's up? Kyle Allen's that bad?
Who?
Kyle Allen?
Oh no, Dwayne Haskins. But there was a lot of questions that were answered. I don't think we were necessarily wrong. There were a lot of variables before the season started that kind of dictated why we were saying what we said.
It's just interesting because a lot of the experts were like, Antonio Gibson. I was like, I think it's a terrible take. And then all the pieces fell into place, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess he is going to end up being worth a lot. And next year he's going to be good too. I mean, he's another one of those.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys where I think it's, like you've always said to me, Treb, to a degree, it's that whole football player versus fantasy perspective, where it's he's just going to get volume, and I don't like him. He's small, he's undersized, but just the volume he's going to get unless they draft something else at that position,
which they probably won't.
Yeah. They've spent so much draft capital there in previous years. It's almost like at some point they gotta go. We gotta get other shit.
So,
and
as we wrap up,
one other pick I just want to say is I would have loved Jeremy Chin after this year, but he went to the second to last pick in our rookie draft.
Oh God! I was gonna take him, but I told Babetsky to take him. He was probably gonna take him anyways. But, just unreal. Then traded Dan Derwin James. That's crying about a 5th round pick. So what we should wrap up on is each of our NFL teams that we cheer for individually, sharing our true blue perspective about our teams. And we'll start with the only team that made the playoffs, Indianapolis Colts fan, Ross Smith.
No, my Browns made the playoffs, bro. Brownies.
Browns still, no matter what.
Ross, I think here's from a Colts fan's perspective, we have a lot of. I think it was a successful year. They say it's never a successful year unless you get to the Super Bowl. But given the circumstances of a 38-year-old Phillip Rivers who had the second highest completion percentage in Indianapolis Colts franchise history, this season and what he did in that team with 1 year, I think I was very proud of. Like to see the emergence of the pieces. Jonathan Taylor we talked about earlier. I think we still need to find, hopefully Paris Campbell comes back and can add another element to this offense. But one of the concerns is we have the three biggest holes of any team built from a foundation, right? We have no quarterback right now because I don't think Rivers is coming back transparently. We need an edge rusher. I love DeForest Buckner, but we need more pressure off the edge to help and give him space for more one-on-one opportunities potentially. And Anthony Costanzo retired after 10 years, so we need a starting left tackle again. And
I didn't know that.
This upcoming draft is filled with a lot of great offensive tackles. There's like 4 or 5 projected in the first round that every person I read has great hits. We're also going to need help in the secondary. We had Xavier Rhodes, who played very well on a 1-year deal, but we need to have a better corners overall. And I really like our linebacker core between Darius Leonard, Bobby Okereke, and Anthony Walker's a free agent, but I think we can even do a better upgrade there. So I think we're trajecting upwards, but we really need to figure out some holes this offseason. And there's a lot of interesting free agent pass rushers this year too. I know Von Miller, I don't know what lawsuit he's going to face. That's going to be a fun, interesting one. But Bud Dupree, I believe, is a free agent by the Steelers. And, I think there's some other premier elite pass rushers in free agency. And I know we have a lot of cap space too.
I actually, what's hilarious is remember when Josh McDaniels was supposed to be your coach? What a blessing in disguise that whole disaster was.
My God.
Frank Reich is an awesome coach. That dude is a coach I'd want. And you guys almost had Josh McDaniels. What a joke.
Speaking of Josh McDaniels, Trev, how about them Eagles?
It's exciting that we'll probably get Josh McDaniels as their coach. It seems like.
You better hope it's as offensive coordinator.
This was not the year I was expecting it to be. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing when we drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round as a quarterback, and now it seems like it was actually a very important pick to make. at the end of the year, it had gotten so bad that Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson wouldn't be able to be on the same team next year. Carson Wentz was a healthy scratch in last year, and this is a guy with a tremendously large contract. We fired our coach. It's just a full-on disaster, and I don't know which way we should be going. I'm thinking we just get rid of Wentz's contract. Hopefully, someone like the Colts will give us something for him. We move on with Jalen Hurts. I don't know. It's a weird situation because I listened to I think it was the punter that you love, Ross, that does the talk. McAfee. He had an interview with Aaron Rodgers. Awesome. It's so funny. Yeah, it was so funny because he had an interview with Aaron Rodgers and he was talking about Carson Wentz with him and how he really respected Carson Wentz and he thought he was really talented, and he went up and had a long conversation with Carson Wentz. And after that, I was just like, maybe Carson Wentz actually is pretty good. If Aaron Rodgers thinks he's good, then maybe he is actually good. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. I think we're going to end up keeping Carson Wentz. Maybe we'll trade Jalen Hurts. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not excited. We're full rebuild. Ertz is going to be gone. Peterson lost the locker room. I think Kelsey's going to retire. Maybe he'll play one more year to fill out the contract, but I think he's probably just going to retire. So it's looking like it's going to be a tough couple of years in Philly. But yeah,
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting with somebody like Wentz. I almost feel like, and I'm not making excuses for him. I like the kid. I hate the Eagles so much, just with a passion. But I like Carson Wentz. It's one of those things I don't. Could there have been something else going on? We talk about regression. It was a regression of a jarring amount. A regression where you look at it and you go, something's not right. You know what I mean? It's who is it? Michael Thomas in the NFC Championship game was a non-starter. It was what the fuck is going on? I get he hasn't played all year, but this is embarrassing. Then it comes out right afterwards that he needs surgery on his ankle. That makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
It makes sense. The Wentz thing doesn't make sense. I literally wonder personal life, mental health, stuff like that, where it's like, could something else have been going on?
I think
Because it's such a regression.
You coined the phrase, and now I use it a lot. Is that he has PMS, which is Patrick Mahomes syndrome, where he thinks he can do all these crazy things and just like.
Can we insert that clip of Vinny just throwing on the run like Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know,
has PMS, Patrick Mahomes syndrome.
I have this theory where I think quarterbacks basically don't know how to play the game as well as they used to, because every young person sees Patrick Mahomes play the way he does and thinks, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't play that way if you're not Patrick Mahomes. And I think it goes all the way up to the pros. And like we talked about it a bunch, where these quarterbacks attempt to do things that they shouldn't be trying, and it costs their team massively. So we term the trying to be Patrick Mahomes when you're not Patrick Mahomes is a bad idea.
So I think there's a little bit of, and he had to carry, because they missed out on their drafting well in receivers. I mean, they with our Siegel Whiteside, Rager was okay, but he's still a rookie, and the rest of the receiving core was, they had a couple of hits, but the
common thread in the NFL is that if you miss on draft picks in the first 3 rounds, you will not be good. That's why the Ravens are always good, because they always hit early. It's why the Steelers are always good, because they hit early. If you don't hit on your first picks, especially at skill positions, you're not going to be good. Like, you're not. It's tough, So but I don't know. I think something's wrong with Wentz. I'm not in a mad way, but I don't know. I'll be intrigued. If something came down that story where it was like, he's having mental health issues, or, he had this nagging injury, I wouldn't be surprised.
I've heard he was like over audibling even when the coach would call plays, and even the coach wouldn't want it audibled, and he would just do it into plays just because he didn't like the play, not because I heard weird shit.
He's had locker room issues where people think he don't really like him in the locker room, and he has a bit of like a god complex where he thinks he's the greatest in the world, and he's got this, which sometimes having a chip on your shoulder is nice, but if it's effective, exactly.
I agree with that.
How about them Cowboys, Dan? Mike McCarthy for the win.
Oh man.
So 2 things to start. They're one of the worst coach teams in the NFL this year. That's the biggest thing. The amount of talent they had with how bad they were. Like, you look at that defense the year before with Marinelli and Chris Richard, it's a top 15 defense at worst. The one year they were 7th in defense, which is really good. You take over the same parts, you lost 1 or 2 things in the secondary, which I get, and you're historically bad. It's awful. Same thing, McCarthy. What was McCarthy's big knock when he was in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers? His offense became predictable. Cowboys, me and my dad could call the plays they were going to run before they ran them, like easily. Like, it was not hard to do. They became predictable. Secondly, out of all the teams, I know a lot of teams claim injuries. They had a lot of injuries, like way too many. And that's one of the problems too, is I look at it and I go, man, I would love for them to already be talking about moving on from McCarthy. They can't, because there's no way you can use this season as a barometer for what they're capable of, because they lost. Like, you look at the offensive line, that was the greatest offensive line, one of the best offensive lines. Them and the Colts a couple years ago was like, oh, this is the gold standard by offensive line. Mm-hmm. Travis Fredericks, the center, who was one of the best centers in the league, is retired from from the Guillain-Barré syndrome. Zach Martin was hurt. Lael Collins was out before the year. Tyron Smith was out the bulk of the year. They were on their 4th string tackles. Like, that's crazy. So, and then when Dak goes down, Zeke is enough. So Zeke, you go, okay, well, you don't have a quarterback now, and you don't have an offensive line, and then people are blaming Zeke. That seems ridiculous, in my opinion. The receivers were a bright spot, but they didn't have anybody throwing the ball.
Pollard looks good.
Pollard looks good, but I mean, you should want that. My problem too is the second Pollard looks good, the thing becomes, oh, well, let's part from Zeke's contract. No. The reason Pollard looks good is because Zeke is also there, and he's running into, like, you got to keep both. Defensively, it was a disaster, and everyone wants to point the blame game, and oh, Jalen Smith didn't have as good a year. You moved him to the strong side, so now he's in coverage. He's not making tackles. It was terrible coaching. You couldn't figure out where you wanted to put your defensive backs. You rotated defensive backs 100 times. You cut Ha-Ha Clinton-Dix before the season started to go with Darian Thompson as your starting safety. He was terrible. Shocker. Like, he was a practice squad player. Like, so it's a combination this year of the injuries. A lot of teams had big injuries. They had probably the biggest injury when you look at what happened to Dak. And they were badly coached. You put those two together, you're gonna have a pretty fucking bad year. Sorry for my language. Like, so I don't. The problem is I don't think you can judge this season because it's like you're gonna give all the coaches a pass for the most part. Luckily, they didn't on what's his name and got new defense coordinators in there, but it's very hard to judge this. Yeah, Nolan. It's very hard to judge it. Like, you're not going to pass judgment because you're going to say, well, everyone was hurt. And it's like, that's fine. But then it'll be the same old Cowboys next year. They'll get everybody back and they'll be 8-8 and they'll be 7-9. And that's what sucks is like, they're so
could win the division. Yeah.
But it's crazy now because those other teams will be better. Unfortunately, the Redskins, if they can get a quarterback, they're trending way up. Well, and the Giants are maybe one season away from being about 8-8 as well. It's not good, but I can win that division.
Well, I heard about Washington's new team name. They're going with the Washington Cowgirls.
So I'm going to just ignore it and move past that. It's just tough. The Dallas definitely has the amount of talent to be the best team in that division. Like I said before the season, the Eagles should have been the one contender. So Dallas definitely has the tools to be the best team. It's just they consistently are not. And they're so badly coached now that I don't know. And they're still going to go in with cap problems. They still have a ton of players they need to get off the cap. And they're probably back where they were 10 years ago where they need to re-up that offensive line. They have some good pieces, but Tyron Smith is probably going to have to either retire or get restructured. They got to figure out center.
What are they going to do with
They're
that?
short another tackle. They got to figure out to sign Dak.
Oh my gosh.
I know you like CeeDee Lamb, and he had a nice year. He had a lot of red flags, in my opinion. He had alligator arms over the middle almost constantly. You cannot send that guy over the middle. He's too soft. He became very coverable by the end of the year when you kind of knew what he was capable of. So there's a lot of questions. I guess that's the one thing with the Cowboys is there's questions on all fronts for them. So it's unless they can answer them quickly, it's going to be an interesting offseason is the best I can do.
What about the Patriots, Jim?
Yeah, what about your team? They suck for the first time in like 20 years.
I'll try to be as.
Oh, one more thing for Ross. Ross, my biggest hope for you guys and him is that you guys get Matt Stafford. That's my prediction.
Matt Stafford's the quarterback everybody wants to have on their.
Because you know why? Because I said this to my dad, and he was like, "That's a great comparison." Matt Stafford is the modern day Archie Manning. Do you guys know like Archie Manning's career? So he's basically on the Saints when they were the worst team in for 20 years. It's why he didn't want Eli to play for the Chargers because he wallowed in it for he was just terrible. He was awesome, one of the best quarterbacks, but he was just on a terrible team. That's literally Matt Stafford in the modern day. I would love for him to get away from that team. When they talked about how they were going to move on and trade for him, I'm like, great, good for him. Get out of there. You've done everything for that city. You've done everything and stay there. You've played more than any quarterback. You've been in more. He's played through more injuries. I would love for him to go to. I don't even like the Colts anymore. I would love for him to go to the Colts and be able to contend.
Go literally, ahead, there's two quarterbacks people are talking about right now. Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan, because the Falcons have the 4th overall pick and they can pick the quarterback there. And the thing is, I don't even feel that confident in Matt Ryan because he's 35 or 30.
It's just doing the same thing you did with Phillip.
Doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. And
you have such a good team, you don't want to keep slapping Band-Aids on that one problem.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
No worries. So with the Patriots, first of all, it feels realistic and refreshing to look to rebuild for once. Like, this feels so good that
nobody else has that opinion. Only a fucking Patriots fan would be like, it's kind of nice to have to rebuild and get some new players in here. That's 6 Super Bowls talking. That's such a load. No one wants to rebuild.
No, well, the point being, because we've moved on from the old aging quarterback that obviously he's done, and no, the point being is they need to address that. Are they building the team appropriately because of all the drafts that they messed up on so much in the past? It really gets exposed, and they just need to figure out the quarterback. Maybe Jarrett Stidham, probably not. But at pick 15, you need to trade up. So what are you going to do? You're going to trade your 2022 first with your 15th overall pick to the Falcons or whoever, just to get, either Zach Wilson
Fields.
or Fields if they're there. Yeah. But like, I mean, they need to figure out, and then it's not Cam because it's just Cam.
So bad. He was so bad.
And then everything else, it just seems like, I don't know, it feels like it's starting to fall apart of like people play into the system. And the system always worked and got it done before. But now it's this whole thing of like, oh, crap, I'm putting in the work into the system like you want us to do.
Yeah.
We're so below average.
Why? They don't have any good players. I really don't think they have any good players on their team.
I think they have good players. I don't think they have any great players. I think Tom Brady. I still think I don't judge either part based on this year, but I think Tom Brady was a great player, and he was the one thing kind of holding that thing together.
Yeah.
And they relied on defense. No, it's all good. They relied on defense so much.
Yeah.
Always that like when you don't have just quarterbacks missing, receivers or Edelman's at the end. Harry is still blossoming from a little sprout. And then you have defensively, I mean, they should have dealt off Gilmore. It's just going to be a mess. It's just a mess. And it's so joyous to finally enjoy that mess that everybody has been wanting for so long.
Go back to the way they were in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know what was great? You know what I heard? There was this meme going around social media where it was really funny. They were like, could you imagine if you're the Buffalo Bills, you win the division, you make the Super Bowl, and then you look across the field and Tom Brady's standing there? You'd be so pissed.
Tom Brady's now playing this week he was
on an all-star all-star team.
Yeah, but in his 14th conference championship. He's been in 14 conference championships.
He's an overachiever.
I agree with you, Jim, in the sense that
insane.
I'm gonna move right past Brady because this is another whole podcast by itself.
I think, but Blair gave me a stat that Tom Brady has won more playoff games against NFC teams than Drew Brees has.
Whoa! Inspired.
That's impossible.
No, because he's won 6 Super Bowls.
Oh, duh. That's hilarious. Oh, my God.
Isn't that ridiculous? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't quantify the Super Bowl as a playoff game, but yeah, that's true.
I like how you guys love Brady now that he's not on the Patriots.
I hate Brady.
Oh, he's the best.
He's a piece of crap. No, you know what? Because he's doing a good job of softening his image, and it's what you got to do when you're kind of going out. You got to rehab that. You got to be. You want to keep those, advertising deals and those things. You got to want people to see you after you're retired. You know what I mean? So you do the golf tournament with Peyton and Tiger Woods. You throw passes to Drew Brees' kids after the game. Like, he's a good dude. He just never let people see it. My issue is that, for better or worse, he's on an all-star team. Like, I'm not passing. He's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. This year is very hard to judge. There's very few people that would not be good as quarterback on that team.
Well, we've got a new season coming up. We're going to start. Treb is a co-commissioner of the league. So what's going to happen is I'm going to fade back a little bit and let everybody send all the hate at Treb.
Yes, please. Thank you.
No. We're going to have like league bylaws we're going to try and work on just for just to make things smoother so that there's not as much management going on with the fantasy football league. And then we'll put out a rough draft just to see people, have everybody evaluate it, chime in, things that they might want to adjust, change, things they like, things they don't like, obviously vote on stuff. And then also we're trying to figure out new ways to restructure the prize pool in regards to highlighting, for some teams that are rebuilding, something to play for a little bit. It's not nothing drastic, but we want to have some variance baked in a little bit more. And then we'll figure out something. We're going to throw some of those ideas around, try and get your feedback on them. And then also we have the draft in about like 15 weeks or so. Middle of May is when we will start the draft. I know we pushed it back to June this past year. We're going to start in the middle of May. Everybody should be able to be prepared by then. If you don't think you're going to, start preparing now then. And then we're also going to hopefully pandemics calm down so we can try and do something a little bit more with the league. But we're going to be able to get these things going a little more frequently, these get-togethers. I know there's been a gap.
You know what? I think this recording worked well. Maybe we could look at doing an open happy hour and stuff where I could just send the link out to people and just be all hop in.
That'd be awesome. Let other people chime in.
People from the league in to hop on, shit on us a little bit like we shitted on everybody else. You know, Trent.
I definitely shit on everyone. That was fun. It was a good year.
I got another question. I got 2 more questions.
Sure.
Super Bowl prediction. Who do you think's going to win?
Next year or this year?
No, this year, right now, 14
Next year.
All right, ready? 4. So, Super Bowl prediction, league MVP, and who do you think is coach of the year? Because I actually think there's some interesting. So many people are so quick to be like, "This is coach of the year," and I'm actually intrigued what you guys have to say about coach of the year. So I think I am hoping. I think the Chiefs are going to repeat. I don't see any reason why, unless Patrick is out, then the Bills are going to shit on them. And I thought it was like a slam dunk. I thought Brian Flores should be coach of the year, like bar none, like no problem. I thought the Dolphins had no business being anywhere near the playoffs, and it seems like he's not even people's like radar right now.
I mean, he should be in the conversation. Final 2 or 3 ones to win coach of the year.
Like Stefanski, people are loving on Stefanski, and I, big Browns fan here, but they had a ton of talent. Like they should have been decent. Like the fucking Dolphins, like no one expected the Dolphins to be good.
Dolphins do have a lot of talent as well.
Top 4 pick.
I'll say for my Super Bowl prediction, I am incentivized to cheer for the Packers. I'd say like week 4, week 5, one of my buddies, Damien, and I, we placed a bet where there was significantly good odds we felt, and there's a pretty massive payout if we do well. But we also might cash out early.
Might be worth a hedge.
Yeah, or a hedge. Hedge is an option, but the cash out, the problem is it's so it's money. But
yeah.
And then so Packers, I'm incentivized in that manner. And then MVP wise, I mean it's probably going to be Rodgers or Mahomes, but the third one, the one that I was cheering for all year. I know it's going to sound weird to say this as a Patriots fan, but it was Josh Allen. I've been a huge Josh Allen fan.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I asked that question. I thought it should be too.
Yeah, I mean, I was it was awesome to watch Josh Allen play this year, man. Yeah. That's the type of stuff you like to see. You like to see a young blossoming quarterback in the league. You're going to be excited to watch him for the next decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Aaron Rodgers as the MVP. Beginning of the playoffs, I had Bills versus Bucks in the Super Bowl, so I'm going to stick with that. I think the Bills over the Bucks. And Coach of the Year, I got to give to Sean McDermott just because the Bills are looking awesome and they're hitting their stride right at the right time. Yeah. So I'm going to give it to the Bills Mafia.
Nice. Yeah, that was McDermott and Stefanski were the 2 I was hearing a lot about, and I was just like, I think Brian Flores. I know they didn't make the playoffs. I was surprised people weren't still out.
I think if they had made the playoffs, that would have been a very solid job. It's so funny that the Dolphins did so well, and they were literally not sure who was going to start at quarterback this week. And Tua did not look good this year. I was unimpressed with Tua.
Good and then terrible and then okay. Yeah. It was a large sample size.
Yeah.
The other thing is we can't lose sight. It's like quarterbacks as well as receivers. Like quarterbacks develop a little bit quicker than receivers, but it's rookie years, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
It's so.
Although Joe Burrow, before he got injured, looked amazing.
Right.
So
yeah,
looked great.
Burrow. And Justin Herbert obviously was insane.
Yeah, that's true too.
So I want Bills Packers selfishly, mainly because, and I'd like to see the Bills win only because we can see all the tables sold out at Home Depot, Lowe's, and every office supply store broken within a 24-hour period. So that
would be hilarious.
Bills Mafia.
Like, can you imagine Home Depot just being like, Yeah, we need about 100,000 wooden tables delivered the week before a Super Bowl, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
And that,
Walmart.
you know,
Walmart goes from people asking about PS5s to wooden tables.
Oh my god! It'd be great. And then MVP, I have it personally. Rodgers, Allen, and Mahomes as the top three and how they finish right now. I mean, Rodgers threw 2 interceptions all year. I think it was like 48 touchdowns
Insane.
to 2 interceptions, which
Insane.
Yeah.
is remarkable.
I thought he had 4, but yeah.
It could be 4. I mean, who knows? I think that was the last numbers I saw on statistics. And then Coach of the Year, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. Flores, McDermott, I think, deserves a ton of credit for getting this, build the playoffs and win it into the AFC Championship games in 1995, whatever it was.
All Josh Allen.
You had 5 picks.
So,
sorry, Rose.
Yeah.
Still
Okay,
insane.
5 picks.
Still insane.
So,
yeah.
Still insane. But, so that to me, I'd have McDermott as a headline. But, I know the team went 6-10, and I'm not saying this for any other reason, but, Ron Rivera to go through chemotherapy and still manage a team and get them into the playoffs, I think speaks volumes. I know when we were talking about coaching hires at the end of last year, he was the first name that stuck out to everybody on this podcast that said, I want Ron Rivera in there. And I think, Washington's in a good direction, finally, I would say, for the first time in years as a franchise. So
they're going to be atop of that division for the next decade.
Maybe. Imagine if the Giants had tanked and gotten what's his Chase Young.
Yeah. So that was an interesting concept because I thought, I was like, some years a coach of the year seems like, oh man, it's a slam dunk, it's this guy. An MVP, oh, it's slam dunk, it's this guy. I felt like this year there was a lot of parity. You really could make a case for so many people. I think a lot of people would even make a case. You can even make a case for Aaron Donald. Now, I'm not the biggest Aaron Donald fan, but I mean, he's potentially an MVP almost every year. So there's a lot of players this year. And like I said, it's funny because at the beginning of the year, everyone thought it was going to be Russell Wilson. He's not even in the conversation. So
yeah, he had a bad second half of the year.
That's all. I was just wondering,